My name's Andrew McCabe. I'm captain of Team Kynaz from USA, and I fought on Dallas Warlords this weekend with Team USA. A lot of what we're going to go over the course of this next hour is kind of a lot of philosophy that goes into it. We'll give you guys some kind of tips and tricks of kind of how I run the position versus how he runs the position. Every kind of runner kind of has their own style, kind of between how I run it, maybe the difference between how Adam Harrington runs it, and so kind of we're going to talk about the kind of differences and stuff there. Maybe a couple drills that we can do. Maybe we can set up a drill or two to kind of work on field awareness. Field awareness for the third position, the center, the runner, whatever you guys call it in your club. Field awareness as your center is the most important thing you can do. It's kind of the most hectic position versus the standard 2 and 1 on the rail. Everybody that is a 1 or a 2 on the rail, they've got a pretty good idea of, hey, this is my job and this is where I have to be. There's a lot more decision making, especially in the first maybe 45 seconds to a minute and a half of the fight, where you can kind of cause that chaos. As we all know, like Dan has talked, once you get a 4 to 5 advantage, the fight's already sort of won. So if your center can create a really powerful and really fast advantage, that adds to kind of my team's success. And it's going to depend on your team dynamics and working as a team and understanding how each one of your members on your team play to everybody's strengths. If you want to play, if let's say you have a very successful center, maybe you guys want to play to that strength. You know, Dominus is a very, very, very strong team when it comes to wrestling. Every person on their team is a very strong wrestler, so they play a very one-on-one game. Kind of, it's a very European 1 versus 1, right? And then sooner or later somebody's going to win a fight, and then you get a 4-on-1, then it's kind of all downhill from there. Versus in the States, a lot of guys are about my size. We have some bigger guys on the team, so we have to kind of change it up. We have to rely on getting one of those takedowns fast and stuff like that. So as playing as a center, being the visually aware is understanding that you have to be the one to make a decision. And we did it on the 12s as well, is just really deciding when is the time to do it, right? It's all about timing. Same thing with the grappling. When you go for an Osoto, it has to be powerful and it has to be fast. So we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about a couple plays that we'll play when it comes to feinting, how to get into the backfield, right, and get that big sweep around the backfield. Obviously, you have to have speed. You have to be good on your feet, especially when you're fighting in this stuff. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. If you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about what you'll talk about.
Hi everyone, my name is Batiste. I am part of Prague Trolls. Been doing this for way too long. So bouncing back on what Andrew said, the runner is a very important position in the way that they can shape the fight. What they'll do when they make this decision, you kind of wait, you see what's happening, and where you're going to go and how you're going to enter the fight is going to drive what's going to happen next if your flanks are strong. So there's a lot of decision making involved, and you really have not to rush yourself and think through your actions, what you're going to do and how you're going to help. One of the major points, which I think is essential for every fighter, not only runners, but mostly for runners, is this is teamwork. You may be small, so you may not be able to out-wrestle big guys. So you got to think in a team and how you're going to assist your teammates and work on it together. Anything?
Yeah, no, that's really right. I've also learned that if you are a runner, it is important that you're going to have to put some size on. You're going to want to get some strength so that you can generate that power. A lot of what we do and a lot of what I do comes from that momentum. So let's go into cross-checking, just the general concept of cross-checking. Whether you're using an axe, a sword and a shield, or whatever it is. I find an axe, a short axe like this, for me works really well. That's something for you guys to play with. He likes to run with the sword and the shield. But a lot of stuff that I saw this weekend, and it kind of goes along the lines with what Dan was talking to for positioning and how we cross-check. Obviously, can I borrow? Hey, Dan, or never mind, I'll use Joe. You know, so if they're fighting and they're on the rail, you know, just like how Dan was talking, you know, me cross-checking him into the rail is no good, you know, because I'm just pushing him into the rail. Or if they're fighting, you can come back up here, as like you guys are wrestling, right? And me cross-checking, you know, if he's out here and I'm cross-checked from this side, I just push him into him. You know what I mean?
The rail
right, or you got the rail. So what we work on a lot is when we work on that first big rotation when I get into the backfield, is my 1 and the 2. Normally our 1 and our 2s play very tight, right? We play really tight because you're looking for that, and this is a very strong position, especially I had my feet wrong. This is a very strong position. We're fighting over top of each other. We have each other here to fight, right? Now, if your team has a very skilled runner, you want to try to pull their 2 off of their 1. You want to give your guy the opportunity to get that cross check, right? So as a 2, you can fight a little bit more out here. Now you have to be very field aware and know what's going on in the field all the time so that they don't get into your backfield. But your idea is to try to, as a team, pull people away from the rail to give your guy a check, okay? Now when we check, if we're using a 2-handed axe, right, what I see a lot of the time is I just see kind of like a, right? And they just hit very flat, and then they kind of drive their body onto them. And if that happens and it works, let's say he goes down and my body just kind of follows, now I'm continually, body's on the ground and I'm gonna stumble over that fighter. Great, you got a takedown, but it doesn't do anything because now you're going down with him, okay? So when you cross check, you wanna make sure that you're driving up. Because if I just drive forward, right, or maybe a lower back, he's gonna kind of arch his back and he can kind of walk his way out of it, right? If I hit him in the upper back here and I drive forward, his body's gonna drive forward and then he's got a lot of weight. You get the helmet and the body forward, okay? So that's a big one, is really driving up and then across. And then the way that you wanna get out of his way is you have to learn, boom, and then take a step out. Don't follow through with that check because you'll end up going down with them when you stumble on the body. Especially as a smaller fighter, you have to use that momentum, right? Maybe as a bigger fighter, you can kind of maybe stop and get that big hit. But as a smaller fighter, you need that momentum to drive. And if you have too much of it or you don't use it correctly, then you end up going down with them.
On the check, I know a lot of you guys like really aesthetically pleasing stuff. So when you're gonna, if you're able to throw front kick, you get in the middle. If you're gonna throw front kick, just backwards. Yep. If you're gonna be able to jump and kick, don't do it in the back. This is gonna be worthless. He's just gonna move forward and it's not gonna do anything to him. If you're gonna kick in the lower back or on the hip. On the hip, it will just make him bend over and just kind of kneel down.
The only time I throw one of those kicks is hip, is only when they're in a middle and not on a cross of the rail. They have to be here because then it gets their hips underneath the rail and then their teammate can then continue to head rip down, okay? So let's go over what do you do as a runner when you have a position for 2 guys are fighting and there's nobody to cross-check in the field. What's up?
Sorry, just a quick question before you move on from this. When you check someone in the back, would you aim for like the head or the shoulder or the?
Yep. No, so when I cross-check in the back, I'm looking right here, right underneath where your pauldrons sit, right? You want to get right underneath that shoulder blade, so it lifts them up and drives them forward. If you just drive them forward, they can normally run out of it, or you'll see a guy, he'll hit, and then he'll kind of like, okay, cool, and then he kind of runs towards the list, right? And it all comes to angles too. You know, you got to make sure you're not checking him into a teammate, into another one of his teammates, your teammate, or into a rail, right? It's kind of wasted energy. You, as the center, our job is to get very low energy takedowns so that then you can pause and decide, okay, we got a 4 to 5 or a 5 to 4 advantage. Where am I going to be the most effective, right? A lot of the 3 position is analyzing the field and being able to make a very quick decision, okay? It's not like you're on a rail here and you have a lot of time to really analyze the field and then come up with a game plan. We all know that kind of, about 35, 40 seconds into a fight, it kind of turns into a lot of a mess. The plan that you came into the field with kind of goes out the window, and then you just have to rely on your team being the better team, right?
I think more than ever, you have to remember that timing is key. And so you're going to be looking at the field, analyzing what's happening, and you're going to have to act really quick on this decision. And a second could change a great takedown it could turn it into an absolute ordeal because the guy will turn around. Yep. And this works as well when people run to you, which will happen a lot because you're small and they're going to be chasing you. When you see them coming to you, you cannot turn around too fast because then they'll just check you in the back and you lose. You'll just fall.
Yeah. So let's go a little bit into that. Let's go into what I call it baiting. Everybody kind of understand the term baiting, the worm on a hook. So if I'm fighting against him, right, or maybe it's a 2-on-1 or something like that, and I have a 2-handed axe, it only really works more with an axe versus a shield or a sword and shield, because as we all know, people understand you're going to get hit harder with an axe. People don't like getting hit hard with axes. So as a center, as a runner, if you're going to run with an axe, you really need to train. They did the polearm or the Hellberg training. Learn how to hit and learn how to hit hard. With the mechanics of pulling and using this as a guide hand, it's a lot like longsword. Your bottom hand is your leverage and your strength. Just like Dan was talking, kind of the overhand here, but you get more strength on the pull than you do on the push. So then what you can do is, I work really well out in the field, okay? So if I'm baiting somebody, I'm gonna wanna make sure I get big hits, right? So that they wanna lunge at this axe. Everybody wants to grab onto the axe and say nope, and then they try to underhook it or something like that to take it from you. So what we'll do is we'll go over 3 different variations of what I do with an open field throw. When I get somebody to lunge at me, or if I get somebody to kind of run at me, okay? There's 3 variations with the axe that I use. If he runs at me, I'm gonna use this. Everybody see this? I use this as leverage, or I'll get this axe hook in. I like using small heads versus big heads. Small heads, it produces a lot more power on the hit in a smaller area, and I get a little bit of a better hook than the big bearded axes. So as he runs at me, I'm going to use this as a weapon, as an extension of my arm, and I'm going to grab this, and then I'm going to step over, and I'm going to toss him, okay? That's your pretty standard kind of a Soto, or whatever they call it on the rail when you get somebody, and it's a pretty simple throw, right?
It works exactly the same with the weapon, with a falchion or an axe. What's going to happen is when he's going to come to you to kind of grab your head, you're going to leave your falchion on your shoulder and then get it around like that. And so this way you really have to push a little and then just throw your hip.
Yep. The second variation is kind of weird. Is I'm going to step off of his plane of travel, and this all comes down to timing, okay? Timing is the most important thing in this aspect. Is when he's coming at me, I'm gonna cross step him, and I'm gonna let this back leg just drag. So he comes, I'm gonna step, and I'm just gonna drag that leg around, and I'm gonna go for those feet, okay? Now even if he hits that, so let's say he goes, boom, right? And he stumbles, right? Where am I in correlation to him stumbling that way? Now I'm behind him, and I've got a very steady boom. Now I can chase after him, and if he's stumbling, I can finish that stumble, okay? that happens quite often. They'll kind of catch their feet if they're good on their feet, and then you just kind of get after them with that.
My variation of this is a lot more simple. You don't need to run around and turn around. You just sidestep a bit, and then you'll either tumble on your leg and stand up. You can turn around really quickly because you're just basically doing a side lunge, and then you can turn around, or you'll just clearly fall because he's hit you right there. When you do this, it's quite important to keep your weapon close to you so that he doesn't kind of grab your arm.
Yeah. The last and final variation is sort of like that. Is what I'm going to do is, I think it's called the Sasai in judo, is it's just a front leg pop. So as he comes towards me, instead of using this head to wrap on this arm, I'm going to use this hand and I'm going to tuck it under here and I'm just going to step, okay? And when I'm stepping, I'm looking to catch the bottom of my foot right about on his heel, or the space between the top of his foot and his ankle. So as he comes to me, I'm going to step, rotate him, and throw him off that way. Once again, if he's able to stumble out of that throw, I can then continue behind him, and I'm behind him, and I can cross-check him then there, okay? So let's talk about a little bit of things that I do with the team on field awareness, okay? And a lot of this with your team is going to come down to communication and being able to audibly hear people calling for help. So what I'll do is sometimes you'll stand there, Joe, if you'll stand there. If I could get one more person to like stand over here. Now, what we do in the club sometimes, and you can do this in a big field, you don't need a gym, you don't need anything for this. And they'll be spaced out maybe across the field, right? 10, 20 meters between each other. And I'll have a 0 spot. And then I'll have the fighter start down here. And what you'll do is he'll be red, maybe green, maybe yellow, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. However you guys want to differentiate the difference between the 3. And what you'll do is you'll have a guy here, and you'll strike, and you'll strike, and you'll strike. And then you'll hear an audible break. So then you'll turn, and you'll run. And when you get to this 0 point, whoever's coaching you will yell a number or a color, whatever one it was that you guys set up. What this does is, and then it would obviously be spread out a little bit more, you have to listen and then act. So it'd be like, hitting, 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 break. 1, boom, and then you'll reset. Hitting, 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 break. 2, okay? And it's really working on that the quick diversion turn, okay? And you'll just go and you'll do this. We usually do this. We'll have a line, and you just keep going, right? It's good for cardio. It's good for footwork, and it's good for really audibly hearing. You can do it in helmets, just helmets, so you can start understanding and hearing where you need to go, okay? So let's talk about now maybe just a little bit of kind of like how do we work on our footwork, because that's kind of a big thing. Some things that I use for footwork, maybe ladders. Everybody know what a ladder is with the floor. So working on ladders, a lot of jump roping. A lot of training that I'll do is you can do some type of powerlifting move, whether it's maybe a clean and press. You'll do 10 reps of that, and then get off and go right into jump roping, right? A lot of jump roping, and not just standing jump roping. You want to work left, work right, work forward, and work backwards, right? And work all of your angles so you can really understand and make sure that you're very, very, very solid when you know your foot's down. I think a lot of people in the 12s yesterday and the 5s later at night were thinking that with some of this sand, especially in these corners, that there weren't going to be able to be as much running as there was. But once you get really safe and you understand that you know once your foot is down and planted that you're safe, you can really start playing. I can run, through all of the mud. Gets a little bit slicker, but you can learn how to do it. So it doesn't matter what you play in, whether it's grass, sand, dirt, because you never know what it's going to be when you get to a tournament. You cannot rely on the field being dry or, you know, a good ground. You have to be able to fight in all conditions. Because if your team relies on your runner and then you come to something like this and you can't run in this field, then that could break your team, you know?
Footwork in general is an essential point of fighting sports, and it'll just give you better stability, but it will also allow you to quickly change on your feet. It's quite easy to work, really. There's tons and tons of tutorials on YouTube. You just really need basically nothing. You make a little line on the ground, a little square, and you can work just your footwork on the side, then moving back. And it's something that's really easy to work, and that will really help you set your takedowns as well.
And practice it in your legs. Get very comfortable in your legs. If you're going to be running, make sure that the inside of these legs here, make sure you're understanding if you have anything. I've seen a lot of guys, they'll run very like this. Their knees get really close to each other, okay? Which is okay when you're not in armor. But I've seen it a couple times either with the greaves or with some guys have the small wings on the inside of their legs. And as they go to run, they catch, okay? So you have to practice running, jump roping, and your ladders in your legs and understand how you have to change the way that you run inside of armor versus outside of armor, because it's very important. You can be a very, very fast runner, long distance runner, but as soon as you put armor on and you try to make those close runs, so in armor, I kind of run, I'm more outside. It's almost like a hop, right? It's less front striding, and I kind of land on my toes. And what that does is it digs my foot in to whatever material's on the ground. So I can, you see that? Versus this, and now I just created this big pocket. That's a good way for me to get stuck and twist a knee, right? Or I can't pivot. So let's say I'm going. Now to pivot this way, because I need to make that break, I'm in the sand. Versus I get a lot more turn on the toes, okay? So learning how to run on the toes is really, really, really important. The last thing that I think I'm gonna go over is what I call like the 3-second rule. Okay? When I'm going back and forth and deciding, like Dan talked about, who on my team needs my help the most, okay? And that's going to come down to understanding who is on your team. Fighting with the same team is very beneficial in knowing how your friends fight, okay? So if I see, maybe it's Dan, you know, a one-on-one, and Dan's here, okay? Well, Dan's a big guy. Dan probably doesn't need my help. I should quickly scan the field and be like, oh, Adam Harrington needs my help more because he's a little bit of a smaller fighter and he's a big guy, okay? That comes into the field awareness and really learning how to process that faster. And the only way that you can get better at processing a fight is by fighting, okay? Because the dynamics of every fight is always different, okay? So going into my 3-second rule is if I decide to help this 2-on-1, or a one-on-one here because we have a man up, I'm the man up. I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna choose my angle, okay? So can you guys just grapple, right? Let's say I'm on Joe's team, right? I'm not gonna come in here and try to strike here. I'm gonna obviously work my angle, and I'll work my strikes, right? I only have time for maybe 2 strikes, maybe. But normally you have about 1. Because usually by the time that they see that they're down a man and somebody's beating the shit out of their friend with an axe, they're usually gonna leave that grapple they're in and come help their friend, right? So I've got maybe 1, 2, and then I'm here. I'm reassessing the field. Do I have to stay here and continue to strike him? No. I can then leave if I see that there's a better opportunity somewhere else. That also works in the concept of the baiting, right? We're up a person. I have decided to come help this person, and everybody else on the field says, okay, the person that is free, the one up, has decided to help this person. So they think that now since I already came over here, I'm going to stay over here, right? Because everybody gets into this very narrow, I'm fighting this person, I have to continue to fight this person until I win this fight. Now, this is a team sport, right? This is not I'm going to fight you, you're going to fight you, you're going to fight you. It's 5 versus 5. So if I'm striking this person, right, maybe across the field, somebody's like, oh, okay, I can get a little bit more safe, and I can come out here and get on top of somebody over here. So then I'm like, cool, he just came off of the rail. He's no longer safe. So then I can break and go to the other side of the field or down the rail and change, okay?
As your team should get more and more reliable, training, learning over time, decision making also comes down to where can you be the most useful. In that case, remember that you don't need to rush into things. Just look around, scan the field. You see, okay, my guy is fighting this big guy here, but I cannot really help. And then this guy here is in a little bit of a more uncomfortable position. So what you're going to do is you're just going to run there, try to do your takedown, and then just step back, look around, assess the situation, and see what you can do next. Coming back onto just 3 seconds. You don't need to just get stuck. Don't get, specifically as a runner, don't get this tunnel vision, because this is really what's going to screw you over.
Yeah. If you're not a runner, and you do have a runner on your team, and you guys want to play to your runner's strengths, it is up to you guys to create those small moments to give that runner the ability to make something happen. So if me and Joe are here are wrestling, right, and my guy has a guy out, and I see that my runner's free, the most advantageous thing for me to do would be to, once again, just like Dan talks, we always want to lock this shoulder, right, and I'm going to turn him here. I'm going to open his back, and if I see my runner's now here, I can push him off to me, right? Because then he either wants to re-engage, or he might, with his back towards the field, if I can pull him from the rail and get his back towards the field, he can't see where my runner is. Now he's lost view. Sometimes what we'll do is if we're in a corner on a rail and I got Joe here, I'll cross face him. So I'll cross here, or I'll put a gauntlet in his face and I'll try to push a head up, right? I'm trying to remove his ability to find my free guy, right? And that's just playing into the strengths of if you have a good runner. Anybody have any questions on any of that?
Do you have any tips when it comes to armor, like which pieces you think are worth being titanium, how much? Do you have any ideas for weight? Because I, for example, struggle with just how heavy my armor generally is. And I'm just curious whether you have any tips for what to replace.
So I do run, my kit personally is all titanium, because I know that my job, and it changes in the 12s, maybe in the 30s, my job, I'm not the big guy on my team. I'm not going to sit there and just let somebody beat the crap out of me with an axe. I'm not built for that, and I didn't build my equipment for that. I built my equipment to suit what I'm best at, right? Which is movement. That's why I do have articulated legs, but I have floating arms, okay? But if you have floating legs, it actually gives you a little bit more, but my articulated legs just fit me very well, and I've used them for a long time. But I have switched to floating arms because I get a little bit more mobility, right? So we're looking for mobility, maybe some weight. Obviously I run a wolf rib, but you can get just as good a vision in nasals or the cross bassinet with the chainmail. And then you don't need these big tanky helmets if you don't plan on sitting there and being like the tank for your team.
I would say armor depends on your personal style and your personal preference. I know I run hardened steel arms because I do get hit a lot on the shoulders and the biceps, which are places I know I'm not really, those are not my strong point, right? So this is where I defend myself, but my legs are titanium, I don't have a protection in the back. You just gotta commit to the role you're choosing and how you use what you choose as armor, right? I cannot decide to just, hey, I'm gonna run into this pack and get beaten up by this dude because I'll freaking die, right? So you gotta really choose the armor that suits how you fight and then really commit to it.
Let's talk just really quick a little bit about kind of decision making, okay? And where decision making can make a really big impact. One of the fights we had, their number 3 decided after they saw me getting into the backfield that he was just gonna not let me go anywhere, right? This is kind of something that happens quite often. Once you see that somebody's doing something that you don't like, you're like, hey, your job now in this next fight is just control that person. You know, maybe when you fight Australia, your job is just to control Colin, right? Because Colin's a very strong, influential, right? But if you can neutralize their strength and rely on the rest of your people to work, then you can have a hand up. So if you're the person, maybe a runner that's going to be neutralized, you have to use that as your advantage, okay? You have to understand that that person now has a job and you have to make their job very difficult, right? Also is, there's very many times that'll happen and you have just a guy just mirroring you. Anywhere you go, they're just on you, right? That's okay. You should have a team that you can trust. Now let's say one of your teammates gets somebody down and now it's 5 versus 4 and that guy is still mirroring you, right? That's okay. Now I know that my guys over there have a 2-on-1 somewhere, right? We have numbers. I just want to keep this guy busy.
In that situation, you can also think about tagging this guy and setting him up for a takedown from your teammates. So what I like to do also in the beginning of the fight is you're just kind of looking at the other runner, you're in the middle, looking at this guy, and then you just throw a few hits and make him come towards you, right? Try to grab you, try to hit you, just piss him off a bit.
And get him away from the rest of the fight, okay? You want to try to separate as much as possible. If the 2-on-1 is down there, I don't want to let this guy pull me towards the 2-on-1. I want to pull him away so he can't help his friend. It's going to be, how do we get to the backfield, okay? Because obviously you can't just run straight through your center. You have to create what I call the angle, okay? Anybody play like video games, right? When you go into a room on a video game, it's called pieing a corner. You work it very slowly. So what I'm going to do is if you're the center and you're just going to be the rail, right? I'm going to want to kind of pull him towards the rail. My guy might be able to grab him, but what I've done is I've now created a much larger gap for me to run through, okay? And sometimes if I've got this really small gap, okay, and I don't feel like I can make it through that gap or something, what I'll do is I'll come through and I'll hit, and then I'll roll. And then instead of keeping my back, then I'll ski through, okay? So you want to pull their center to the sides, right? So let me get just you here, you here, and then you are my center. You guys are on the same team, 1 and 2. Yeah, 1 and 2. So if this is the center, I'm going to be working him left and right. I'm going to be kind of flashy. I'm going to be like, okay, am I going this way? And so maybe I come over here. And I'm with my 1 and my 2, and now we got 3 over here, right? And now what that does is maybe on the other side, now they start kind of changing their angle, right? And then I can skirt through. But sometimes what I'll do too is I'll pull him to the middle if he's just really good at his job. He might be just as fast as you. You have to do something. I will commit to hitting one of their one of their 2 flanks, right? But I'm not really committing to that 2. I'm committing to faking it. So I'll go and I'll go, boom, and then I'll roll out, okay? And what that does is, if he's too far forward, he has a whole lot more of a turning to do. Now he's got to be like, boom, oh. Well, at that point, I'm already past him in his backfield halfway around. You know what I mean? So really play with making them think you're going to do one thing and doing something different. And that can be, you're going to hit and then jump. You could just crash. Boom. Yeah, I might check him into the rail. It really doesn't do anything. But I don't care. I'm just trying to get this center to think I'm going to try to stay over here. So I'm going to go, boom. And then I'm all the way back around. By the time their center gets around, there's not much he can do. I'll give you one tip on how to beat me if you ever fight me. Keep your guys against the rail, fight very tight, and as a number 3 in the field, if I get through, boom, and I'm in the backfield, don't chase me. Do not chase that runner. Go straight to defending your number 2s, right? So let's say that side of the field doesn't know that I just got through. If I go through and he tries to chase me and he's not as fast, their number 2 is gonna lose. The best thing he can do is I get through, and he goes, okay, and he just goes back and he guards their backs. Okay, I can't do anything. I can't get that easy check. There's been a lot of times where we fight Dominus and they have very, very, very confident and strong rail discipline, which means that if somebody gets through and we're here, I do this with my team too. If a center gets through, we go rail, and then we're here. There's no cross checks to be had, okay? So if you're worried about their center cross-checking, come up with something with your team, an audible, something that you can yell to let your team know on the other side of the field that they're possibly in danger. Once again, this is a team sport. Let's look out and make sure that our friends and our fighters on the other side are protected, right? Because the last thing you want to do is lose a fight because people weren't paying attention, okay? You got anything else to add?
Last thing I would add is there is a very easy way to gain advantage right at the beginning of the fight. And this is, all right, you come here. So let's say he is the runner and these are my number 1 and 2. And what I'm gonna do again is I'm gonna fight him a little bit. I'm gonna try to piss him off. Just try to make him a little bit angry so he comes at you. And then I'm gonna step back. And this is gonna open for a not runner to run and tank him. So this works almost every time. It's really easy to do, it's really low effort, and then this guy can just go back to his position, beat this dude up again. And here we go, you have an advantage, and you as a runner have taken care of the other runner. So no one to tag you, and you got the advantage.
Does anybody have any questions on anything that we've gone over, or anything that they saw over the weekend of maybe how something works or how to create some type of play or chaos?
Where do you get your stamina?
Honestly, so I went from just powerlifting, right? Lifting really heavy and trying to get some muscle mass to try to put on the weight. It's something that everybody's gonna have to work on themselves. So I went from like 165 pounds, I don't know what that is in kilograms, I apologize, to about 185. So I put on 20 pounds. But the most important thing for me was to make sure that I put on weight, but you have to keep your speed, right? So I got to like 190-ish, a little bit over 190, and I was like, man, like I feel really heavy, and I felt like I was getting slower. And I was like, well, I can't get slower, so I had to get a little bit smaller again so I can get a little bit faster. There's a balance, you know. Now, some people that are really good at Craig Ivey, Craig Ivey's a big guy, but he's very fast on his feet and very light. You know, it's all up to you. How much weight can you carry with your equipment? Because that's going to add, you know, 65 to 80 pounds, you know. So play with it. Put some weight on, strength train. I do a lot of maybe interval running where it's kind of jogging, like a minute of jogging, 2 minutes of sprinting, and then you're back down to jogging, and then you're back up to 2 minutes of sprinting. You know, or doing the shuttles back and forth really fast. You know, I've kind of pure strength as a runner is not always going to help you. Now, if you're Dan Krug size and you're not running anywhere and you can rely on that strength, you know, like if I'm going to head rip Joe, you know, if he's around and I'm going to head rip, and I do what Dan talks about. I don't underhand. I make sure I never move this hand. This upper hand always stays backwards, and my right side is my stronger side. So when I come in on Joe here, this is my stronger side. So I'm going to pull, and then I'm going to rotate towards the rail, okay? But as a smaller person, something you can do for some leverage for head rips, especially against taller fighters, is once I get on Joe, right, maybe I'm up here. Like I just don't have the power to pull him back. Now I'm going to come up, and I'm going to get this knee into his hip. And now I'm going to, so I can really get in there, and I'm going to lean back with it. I use my knee. That gives me more leverage, a little bit more power against the bigger fighters. Anybody else? Cool. Well, I hope to see all you guys in the next Buhurt League Worlds, and hope you guys are faster than me next time.